Beep, 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 beep. Welcome to the court of the EDI Jester. How are you all? Yeah, I've got something wonderful here. Something wonderful. This is going to be a long one. Get yourself a cup of coffee. Nice biscuit. Chill out. Chillax. Right? Chillax. Project me onto the screen. Whatever it is you're going to do. Okay? Please hit subscribe and get notifications going. And also, if you could share this, that'd be great. I've got an article here from Artillery Row, which I'm going to read, written by a veteran campaigner in the field called Anne Sinnott. Anne! Hello, Anne. How are you? So I'm going to read it for you, and I'm going to put the link in the doobries, and then you can go and have a look at what Aaron's done previously and some of the work she's done. I think it'd be interesting to interview Anne at some point when I've got me outfit set up and everything. We'll see. So I think that'd be quite interesting to do. So By Stealth, it's called. It's a great article. Get that coffee, and away we go. How the trans lobby took over the British establishment and the effort to fight back. 20th of July, 2023, by Anne Sinnott. You could also listen to the article on Artillery Row, which is very good. When Baroness Faulkner, chair of EHRC Board of Trustees, that's the Equalities and Human Rights Commission trustees, recommended that the government consider an amendment to clarify that sex in the 2010 Equality Act means biological sex, uproar ensued. Trans activists protested about their rights being stripped away. Press coverage referred to an elite group of EHRC people, which they call Gold Command, conspiring to oust Faulkner and an activist-inclined staff enthralled to groups like Stonewall. Ian Aitchison, former COO of EHRC, said, "We cannot have Britain's rights regulator and its legitimate board authority subverted by ideological activism from within." The conflict with Faulkner has an entangled history, and it effectively hinges on two issues. One is the Equality Act 2010 single-sex exception, SSE, brackets, close brackets. Prior to Faulkner's tenure, much of EHRC's guidance on applying single-sex exemptions was unlawful. This may be difficult to believe, but it's true. An example, where someone has a gender recognition certificate, they should be treated in their acquired gender for all purposes, and therefore should not be excluded from single-sex services. Yet EA 2010 allows exclusion with or without a GRC from single-sex services, for example, in domestic abuse refuges, public toilets, and changing rooms, provided it is a proportionate means to achieve a legitimate aim. As confirmed in the legal case AEA versus EHRC May 2021 by EHRC's KC, King's Counsel, persons with a GRC can be lawfully excluded from single-sex services and spaces, a policy which states that trans people must be allowed to access single-sex services spaces of their choice is directly inconsistent with the law. Compare this to what Stonewall has been saying. Compare what Anne's put here to what Stonewall has been saying. Extraordinary stuff. The other issue concerns gender-critical belief that sex is biological, binary, and immutable, which it is. The legal case, Forstater versus CGD, in May 2021, confirmed that GCB is included, gender-critical belief is included in the EA10 protected characteristic, religion or belief. It means that a GC person, a gender-critical person, cannot be compelled to act contrary to their belief, i.e. accept that birth sex can be changed, use preferred pronouns, or arguably share toilets with a person of the opposite sex, irrespective of presentation. Since Forstater, there have been two other successful standout cases regarding gender-critical beliefs, that being Bailey versus Garden Court Chambers, May 2022, and FAMI versus the Arts Council, UK, July 2023. So that's one happening currently. If you remember, I did a video on all of these. I've spoken about all of these before. Recently leaked Cabinet Office draft guidance acknowledges gender-critical belief. Some employees believe that a person's, it should say most, but it doesn't. All, that's what it should say. Some employees believe that a person's biological sex is immutable and must be treated with respect and dignity. However, the guidance retains an unlawful element which undermines its gender-critical belief stance. If the employee has a GRC, says the guidance, they are legally entitled to access toilet facilities in their acquired gender. It is the individual's legal right and forms an important part of gender transition. Thus, despite clarification in the cases that Anne has mentioned previously, the Cabinet, the Cabinet Office continues to position itself beyond the law. It doesn't stop there. A civil service source said there's a lack of understanding about the Equality Act and the effect of a GRC in the Cabinet Office and through the civil service. This begs the question, is the government legal department, which trains other departments, also in thrall to trans ideology? Another source said, the government legal department is permeated with transgender ideology. Lawyers who are sympathetic to gender critical views are afraid to speak out. Yet another civil service source referred to a staff LGBT network in which outrage was expressed about women having any say at all in which facilities trans people use. Only trans people should be consulted. A fourth civil service source, who was accused of harassment for merely questioning the use of pronouns, spoke of an oppressive work environment. Not knowing who to trust and having to think before speaking, it's like being back in the closet. They refer to bringing the whole self to work, but I, as a same-sex attracted person, can't bring my whole self to work. How did this all come about, asks Anne. How did civil servants and departments become embroiled in trans ideology? It didn't happen overnight. The article continues. The first gender clinic for adults opened in 1966. JID's Clinic for Gender Dysphoric Children opened in 1989. Early 1990s saw transgender studies instated in universities. In 1992, female-born Stephen Whittle co-founded Press for Change. Mermaids followed in 1995. 2008 saw the emergence of gendered intelligence. Monolithic Stonewall adopted the T in 2015. And with a government grant to promote lesbian, gay, bi and trans people in primary and secondary schools, fostered trans ideology. All of this is what led us down this road to the mess we are in now. Gen Z was steeped in trans ideology for much of their formative years. Gen Alpha is now undergoing the same. Many entered the civil service, named as top graduate employer in 2019, to become directly or indirectly trans ideology activists. It's not just junior civil servants, though. Amongst the fervent are senior figures in pivotal positions who will mostly remain unnamed. There's then a byline, advocates in the corridors of power. David Isaac was vice chair and chair of Stonewall for 14 years from 1998 to 2012 and East EHRC chair for 4 years from 2016 to 2020. Some have speculated, but no evidence has emerged that Isaac was involved in the promotion of trans ideology beyond the remit of his EHRC role. Regardless, unlawful guidance was issued on Isaac's watch. Though not a civil servant, Stephen Whittle stalked the corridors of power as co-founders of Press for Change, which was described by Lord Alex Carlyle as one of the most successful lobby groups seen in the last 25 years. Whittle was included in the EA 2010 Code of Practice consultation and almost certainly had the ear of key people prior to enactment of the Gender Recognition Act. Some claim Whittle's engendered penalties, transsexual and transgender people's experience of inequality and discrimination, was instrumental in the drawing up of EHRC's remit. In deepening or inculcating trans ideology in civil servants, one Whitehall insider was exceptionally prolific. Male-born Jackie Gavin's civil service career began June 2009 and ended May 2009 via a series of diversity and inclusion roles. Gavin advised on policy, gave talks on trans issues and delivered trans training in major departments. Department for Work and Pensions, Financial Conduct Authority, closely associated with the Treasury, Department of International Trade and the Cabinet Office. An interview with Civil Service World reveals Gavin's further reach. I look forward to working closely with my colleagues in the Government Equalities Office and the Ministry of Justice. Gavin founded the DWP Transgender Network and held lead position in the cross-department trans network, Agender. Terry Moran, the then second permanent secretary at DWP, spoke of Gavin's influence. He said, "There can be few people more suitable, passionate or committed to equality interests than Jackie. She is a tireless, supported," and that's literally what he said, supported, and thought leader, not afraid to challenge preconceptions or prejudice. A role model, always. And then Anne moves on to another subheading, trans allies. Being small in number, the trans community relies on allies to support and boost its cause. The influence of Gavin and others on fellow civil servants is evident in Civil Service People Survey 2019, results by gender, which broke ground with the inclusion of cisgender, a vile term, a trans term coined to denote biological sex, with adoption and with adoption an indicator of allyship. So you get that, right? So if you use the word cisgender, you're seen as an ally. The word cis is a vile slur. Of 252,667 male respondents, 125,410 self-described as cisgender man. That's 50% of the male people in that survey. Of the 293,072 female respondents, 145,169 self-described as cisgender female. Almost half of biological females and males regard themselves as cisgender. They regard themselves as a subset of their own sex. This is rather than their birth sex, which testifies to successful trans ideology induction. What impact did this have? One effect of allyship was the horrendous attack on Baroness Faulkner. Another was the legal case Thomas versus DWP 2023, in which Anna Thomas successfully sued her employer for breach of Civil Service Code impartiality requirement. Thomas, echoing my sources, brackets, close brackets, revealed an intimidatory workplace, staff afraid to voice opinions, with non-attendees at trans training branded de facto transphobic. Another outcome with far-reaching consequences was rendering EHRC guidance on EA 2010 unlawful. Next subheading is means to an end. In late 2019, I, meaning Anne, searched EHRC guidance and found the earlier referred to extract. Where someone has a gender recognition certificate, GRC, they should not be excluded from single-sex services. In 17 pieces of guidance, Anne found this, and linked to in 12 other items. Even when technically correct, a plethora of guidance was manipulatively worded to induce alarm, with emphasis placed on inclusion. Reasons to exclude must be compelling, for example. Spectres of fear were coercively evoked. Businesses and their staff should take care to avoid a decision based on ignorance or prejudice, as this may lead to unlawful discrimination. EHRC guidance was disseminating trans ideology. AEA, that's Anne's company, AEA, okay, made official complaint to the EHRC CEO, Rebecca Hilsenrath, who resigned 2 months later. Copied to David Isaac, who resigned 6 months later, and commenced legal proceedings. A follow-up Freedom of Information request revealed staffers acting autonomously, differences of opinion presumably between trans allies and those not, and a poor grasp of the law. Let's say that a broader review of web content is currently taking place, is the quote. I would definitely rather not pull the guidance. I think it's correct, was one quote. It's being allocated in order for someone to take the lead on agreeing a corporate line in respect of access to single-sex services for those who have a GRC. It's an issue on which we are not all agreed. And then another quote. Did you see my email this morning? Melanie Field, EHRC Executive Director, doesn't want a caveat as to what we think of the term. She didn't know there is already one on our website. What this shows, as Anne continues, is incorrect statements and actions without sanction of senior staff are bad enough, but the notion of agreeing a corporate line is extraordinary. It is as if the issue was finessing an awkward situation rather than the correct application of the law. Subheading the wider world. Few read EA 2010 or each EHRC guidance, even rectified EHRC guidance, brackets, close brackets. Instead, there is a reliance on training organisations or trusted entities, which for 10 years could point to unlawful EHRC guidance. Thus was trans ideology spread far and wide. Direct reach-outs from EHRC staffers were not unknown, as when this school, and there's a link to that story, was incorrectly informed that if they did not allow pupils to use the single-sex facilities which matched their true gender identity, it would constitute an act of discrimination. Good Lord. Good Lord. All sectors were penetrated. In the legal profession, for instance, the certificate, GRC, ensures that transsexuals cannot be excluded from single-sex services. In the security industry, if a trans person says that a particular toilet is appropriate for them, then that is the appropriate toilet for them. See also leading food retailers. There's links here from Anne for you to follow for your further study. Trans ideology even seeped into the judiciary. Barrister Thomas Chacko critiqued the Equal Treatment Bench book because it, speech marks, attempts to give an authoritative explanation of what transgenderism is and problems trans people face, and does this in a partisan and didactic fashion. That's the bench book that advises judges. You got it? So the judiciary, infected. Major retailers, infected. Civil service, infected. Security, infected. Yep. Keep up. And what they're saying is this was done in partisan and didactic. You will do it. It flowed on to local councils. Melbourne councillor Sarah Brown tabled a motion: transgender people will not be excluded from gender-appropriate single-sex sex-segregated facilities operated by the council. Brought to my attention in 2018, this led to my resignation from the council at that point, and resigned at that point. And continues, major organisations such as Deloitte no longer prominently display the nuts and bolts of policy on their websites. However, its support for trans and gender diverse applicants stipulates choice to use the building facilities staff are comfortable with. Deloitte is part of Interbank, the financial services LGBT forum, as are 31 other leading financiers, most likely all with similar policies. So that's banking as well. Banking, the law, the civil service, retail. Can you see what it is yet? And continues. Even when aware of a revised guidance and classification in AEA and Forstata, this is two cases Anne's mentioning there, many organisations are in stasis. Lawfulness clashes with desired retention of a wedded to ideology. It is untenable. It is an untenable position. More GCB cases, gender critical belief cases, are in train, with others in the pipeline. The status quo cannot hold. Critical mass, with the tumbling of an edifice built on distortion, is just over the horizon. Trans activists claim that if sex is clarified as meaning biological sex, it will strip away long exercised rights. This is a red herring. Trans people are free to wear what they want, call themselves what they like, and they are rightly protected in law from discrimination, harassment and victimisation with full employment rights. Nonetheless, they do not have, nor ever had, an automatic right to access single-sex services or spaces. It is women's rights that have been eroded. These are the rights that Baroness Faulkner sought to restore. Under her leadership in April 2022, grounds for same-sex application, the single-sex, space application were made. Explicit, privacy, decency, avoidance of trauma, and health and safety. Hours of protest followed. Now Faulkner recommends consideration of an amendment to clarify that sex really does mean sex, and much of Whitehall is jumping in fury. Anne has laid out for us there in a very readable way and in a worthwhile article the full and absolute capture by gender ideology, queer theory, and all the crap that comes with it of the civil service, the financial institutions, retail, banking, law, and even judges. Anne has laid it out there clearly for us. So thank you very much for that, Anne. Anne and I disagree on one thing, and one thing only in that particular article, which is I think if a bloke turns up dressed as a woman at work, you've got to ask if it's a fetish. And that's the problem. I keep saying this about the HR letter. Somebody's got to write it. There is a man in my office who is practicing a fetish without my consent. HR should deal with that. That's the letter you want to write. That's the letter you want to write. That's the email you want to send. You want to really put the cat amongst the pigeons? Do that. Do that. Because in many cases, the vast majority of cases, it's a fetish. And if not that, a paraphilia. And they're in public, doing it in public. Where and how have we got to this? I mean, really, Anne helps us understand a bit more. Thank you very much for that, Anne. A great piece, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Good, please do go and read the original piece by Anne on Artillery Row, and I'll also put Anne's Twitter handle in the dubris. All right, you go well. Just you go well. I'll see you later.